Please join me in welcoming Dr. Rory Cooper from Pennsylvania. Dr. Cooper, with your permissions, I'm gonna present a fast summary of your short bio. Professor Cooper is Distinguished Professor of the Departments of Rehabilitation Sciences and Technology, University of Pittsburgh. He is also Associate Dean for Inclusion School at the School of Health and Rehabilitation Sciences, University of Pittsburgh. He is also founding director of the Human Engineering Research Laboratory, Veterans Affairs Pittsburgh Health Systems at Pittsburgh. He is also founding director and the Veterans Affairs Senior Research Career Scientist at the Human Engineering Research Laboratory. You are so inspiring, Dr. Cooper. He's also adjunct professor at the Robotics Institute of Carnegie Mellon University and also professor of physical medicine and rehab at the Uniformed Services University of Health Sciences in Bethesda, Maryland. Dr. Cooper published over 300 peer-reviewed articles and 3 books, included the award-winning Care of the Combat Amputees. He also has 25 patents. Dr. Cooper has improved the lives of many veterans through technologies. He is also an Army veteran with the spinal cord injury, and he won a bronze medal in Paralympic Games in Seoul, South Korea, in 88. Please join me in welcoming Dr. Cooper, our champion and our prestigious professor. You can get started, Dr. Cooper. As I promised, I get you started by.
Good morning or good afternoon, everyone. Bonjour. Thank you for that kind introduction. I mean, that was very nice of you. This is good. It's a little awkward because I'm just speaking to a screen, but hopefully it'll be entertaining and informative. This is where our laboratories are located. It's a place called Bakery Square, as you can see the sign on the top of the building. It's actually a research park with Google, Carnegie Mellon University, University of Pittsburgh Medical Centers, Enterprise Institute, University of Pittsburgh, and U.S. Department of Veterans Affairs, as well as some retail and other spaces. So it's nice because we have a lot of industry and academia working together. It's a pleasant place for both faculty, staff, and students to work. So I'd like to start out with 2 things. On the right is the cover of the IEEE Spectrum magazine from a few years ago, saying that we need more engineering heroes, which is probably true today as much as anything, not only due to the healthcare heroes fighting coronavirus, but the engineering heroes that are helping them fight the coronavirus as well. And then lastly, a lot of the technology that this conference has talked about in the past and that I'm going to talk about this morning is really the concepts are not new. Howard Rusk, many of you may know, he started the Rusk Institute in New York City, which is a rehabilitation hospital. And he was also a veteran in World War II and a physician, and thought that he was a strong advocate for getting people with disabilities back to work. And that technology is a strong way of doing that. So really, I like the title of this conference about augmented humans because that's really what I am. Right? I'm a wheelchair user, and I wear eyeglasses, and I have an adapted vehicle, an adapted home, and all of those. And all of us, by the way, we use these smartphone technologies, and that in some ways now makes us augmented humans. Or today, where we can be all together from around the world, yet every one of us is at home or at work. This is from Whiz Pop Bang, if you get the chance. It's actually a magazine for young kids. And the reason I brought that up is one of the things, if you're successful as a professor with time, then you can be have a little more freedom in the type of research and activities that you do. And one of the things that I would like to encourage you is to reach out to young people and encourage them to become scientists and engineers. Unfortunately, women and people with disabilities and people of color are largely underrepresented as well as other minority groups in science and engineering. And I want to give you make the argument that the more diversity we have, cultural diversity, ethnic diversity, educational diversity, global diversity in science and engineering, the more able we will be able to be to solve big problems, and that we need to invest in our youth. So this was actually a magazine focusing on wheels. It was very nice that they chose to do a little highlight. They highlight one scientist every issue and highlight my work with wheels. To go back. Now I want to show you a video that Google produced. One of our students, Matt Landis, was a Google scholar. So give you a little bit of a way to virtually tour Hurl.
I tell people frequently, and I really mean this, is kind of like Willy Wonka in the Chocolate Factory. I get to play with robots and all these technologies.
Our mission is to apply engineering and advanced technology to improve the mobility and function of individuals with disabilities. A large number of them are our veteran population.
Every day that you come in, there's this kind of wonderful energy here.
From students to staff to faculty, we wouldn't really be living up to our mission if we didn't include people with disabilities in all aspects of what we do. Our vision is a world where everyone with a disability can participate on a level playing field to their greatest extent possible.
I've got a disability, I certainly wouldn't think of myself as disabled, but it was having a huge impact on my life, on my wife, and my children. We can do better than that. We have to do better than that. So I work here because I want to give everyone an equal opportunity to whatever they want. Disability shouldn't be the thing that prevents them from getting those things.
Good. I hope you enjoyed that video. You got a little bit of chance. Hopefully when this COVID-19 pandemic settles down a little bit, you'd be welcome to come and visit us and see us in person. I'd also like to emphasize the importance of assistive technology, ensuring that we have the most appropriate AT in the environment, and working with clinicians. I saw that Amin is in the Department of Occupational Therapy. My wife is in the lower left corner there in the yellow jacket. She's a physical therapist. She's actually been working in the hospital throughout this COVID-19 pandemic. So she's one of those frontline providers that you hear about. Also, what I love about that picture is in the wheelchair is Dr. Jung Bae Kim, who is the chairman of occupational therapy at Yonsei University in Korea. And her clinic has a lot of people with disabilities, both as clients, but also as providers. And then, what the AT does is it's clinicians in AT provide users with the skills to meet their life goals. And we need to have it founded in a solid and clinical scientific knowledge base. So I'm a firm believer in this participatory action engineering paradigm where you engage users. So that means people with disabilities, family members, caregivers, clinicians, all working together with engineers throughout the idea from conceptualization and the need through storyboarding, like you see in graphic novels or movies, to mock-ups, which we can do with 3D printing or even simple as cardboard, all the way through to best practices and community participation and employment. Nice thing is there have been several reports two from the national academies in the United States that have showed that technology helps to promote social mobility, health, and participation among people with disabilities. Actually, even a paper I wrote with colleagues up in Canada, also with the Canadian Department of Veterans Affairs, showed the same thing, that it does provide reintegration and community participation. There are barriers to STEM education among people with disabilities, which is a technology or augmented human research opportunity. In the United States, we have the Americans with Disabilities Act. There are similar laws in many countries around the world. There's also the UN Convention on Human Rights for People with Disabilities, which espouses much the same thing. And that we need to reduce the barriers to STEM education. That means providing teachers with the tools to be able to incorporate people with all backgrounds, especially with different levels of impairment, and also create technologies to be more inclusive. And then also we need to prepare transition services so that individuals can be successful once going through rehab. So we have done voice of the consumer studies. This was published a couple of years ago. We surveyed over 1,000 users of assistive technology. This is the breakdown by different diagnoses. We actually wound up with about 1,600 people finally. What I think there's four things that are to take away from this, or a couple things. One is that people want to live without a caregiver, with less caregiver assistance. They want to go to work or school and be more productive at work and school. They want to have something that meets all their personal mobility needs, and they want to be able to travel freely, vacation, cruise, airlines. Also, as a roadmap to research, one of the things that they were reported was very interested in participatory design and research, and that includes universal design policy, practice and costs, education, inclusive education, standards and reliability, and dissemination of knowledge translation. Specific areas that for the people with disabilities reported being interested in, which were advanced wheelchair design, including alternative power sources, collision avoidance, and lightweight, portable, and smaller wheelchairs, smart device applications, wearables, environmental controls, and smart home technologies, and then better human-machine interfaces, alternative controls, brain-computer interfaces, and graphical interfaces, and then assistive robots and intelligent systems, like autonomous and semi-autonomous robotic wheelchairs, navigation assistance, exoskeletons, and robotic transport devices. We followed up with that study on where do consumers get their information. And it turns out that if you do a cluster analysis, this is a K-cluster analysis, you find out that people fell into three different clusters. Those that are engaged, disengaged, and those that prefer the internet, family, and friends. So the interesting thing is that the engaged users were mostly manual wheelchair users. They'd been using assistive technology for greater than 6 years, and they were most highly educated and had the highest level of income. And those that were disengaged had the highest variety of multiple sclerosis versus spinal cord injury, were least used the device for only 2 to 5 years, and had the lowest income and the lowest level of education. Those that relied largely on family, friends, and caregivers turned out to be college-educated women living in urban environments. And you can see some of the sources where people get their information: social media, events, physical and occupational therapists, friends and family, their physicians, and the internet and newsletter. So let's look at some of the things that we've studied. Wheelchair quality is a huge challenge. Unfortunately, even though wheelchairs are regulated by most healthcare systems in the world, there's still a challenge with wheelchair quality. And these are some of the common failures: caster stem failures, seat frame failures, cross brace failures. If you look at this Kaplan survival curve analysis, what's very interesting is that this solid line here is where all wheelchairs should be better than that solid line. Yet, you can see most wheelchairs fail prior to that line, and that the aluminum ultralight wheelchairs tend to perform, perform better than other wheelchairs. It's interesting, we just literally this month published a follow-up paper on this, and that data is still true in 2020. So unfortunately, this was supposed to be an Olympic and Paralympic year that's been pushed back to 2021. One of the projects we were working on was the Smart Wheel, which this is a racing chair Smart Wheel to help athletes in the United States and the UK perform better in wheelchair racing. I started doing this when I was a graduate student, which resulted in the Smart Wheel, which is used to do wheelchair ergonomics around the world, and has helped reduce the rates of carpal tunnel syndrome and rotator cuff injuries. So if you think about it, that you want the wheelchair to become an extension of the user. And so it is essentially, wheelchair users ideally would be augmented humans. And to give you an idea is, for example, a wheelchair racer can do a marathon in an hour and 20 minutes, where a runner can do a marathon at the world record just under 2 hours. So that's certainly talking about augmenting human. It's all human powered, yet considerably faster than even with arm power than a runner would be. This is also showing some of the data that altering the push rim type in the wheelchair setup can reduce rotator cuff injuries. These are ultrasound images. That region, ROI's region of interest, and it's looking at the biceps tendon and edema in the biceps. Edema in the biceps tendon, and also any tears in the biceps tendon. And then green shows the median nerve, which is related to carpal tunnel syndrome and seeing compression of the median nerve. That resulted in ergonomic push rims such as the Natural Fit and the Surge, which so you don't need a pinch grip, but you can use more of a tool grip, which allows people to push with greater force with more efficiency. It's also led to a couple of other inventions. For those of you that have ever had the experience of pushing a wheelchair across cobblestones or other uneven surfaces, you'll see that there's a lot of vibration and force gets transmitted through the wheelchair to the user. One of the things we worked on was the oblique angle suspension caster fork, which adds a suspension element into the front casters where most of the vibration is transmitted through, and it can reduce those vibrations substantially, as well as increase the life of the wheelchair. Also worked on a device called that's now commercially available, as the Glide. There's also a device we developed called the Path Lock. If anyone's ever pushed a wheelchair down the sidewalk and sloped towards the street in order for water to drain off. One of the challenges is that the wheelchair wants to slope towards the road, and that way you always have to push harder with one end than the other. So this device sort of locks the caster straight with the magnet or with a D10, and then you can unlock it by lifting it up. What's very interesting about this is once it became available to people, what they did is people purchased it actually to use it as a one-arm drive. One thing, so they could just simply go within their house or their office and hold a coffee cup in one hand and push with the other hand. Or if they had a stroke and they used one foot, one arm, this way they could help bias the wheelchair to go straight. It's also where I think it's very interesting about wearables is that if you look at people with disabilities, if we just simply look at wheelchair users, they are at high risk for being sedentary and have lower caloric expenditure. And this can result in them becoming obese and eventually leading to heart disease and other cardiovascular and cardiorespiratory problems. So we've been working along with others on developing apps. This is the app we call the Wheel Fit, which provides people with some fitness tips, allows them to monitor their caloric intake, and also measure their pushes and their heart rate and respiration, and gives them guidance or some tools in a workout library for aerobic activity, muscular strengthening, and flexibility. One of the things that I find extremely challenging with this, and I'm sure many of you do as well, is that if you look at this bottom graph here, this light blue is sleep, this darker blue is sedentary activity, and yellow is light movement, and red is actually aerobic exercise. So what you see here is the trend is there's very little real exercise happening in this population. And this is a sample of data aggregated over 50 people. What's also very interesting is if you see this red area here, it's all clustered on Thursday evenings, which is when the individuals were visited by the graduate student. So what you can see is, even though people know they're being monitored, their behavior really is very difficult to change. And that one way you get them change is when people do visits, they know they're going to be seen, then they might actually comply with their guidance. So another challenge that you might see is that there's a lot of metabolic disease and unhealthy weight among people with disabilities. And one of the things that's common to almost all weight loss systems is the ability to weigh yourself. Yet people with disabilities often don't have the opportunity to weigh themselves, and may only get weighed once a year, if at all. And so we had started to tackle this problem by developing a scale that goes under the feet of the bed, because one thing that most people do is sleep in bed every night. And one of the challenges that we had is we used some machine learning and artificial intelligence in order to discern whether it's one person in the bed or two people in the bed or the dogs in the bed. And then all of that data is fed to the cloud. We can also look at sleep length and sleep quality.
Basically, in order to meet the clinical need that we had identified of people getting power wheelchairs with power seat functions, but their condition not improving. And so we did a series of experiments to identify that people would use their power seat functions, but not necessarily as instructed. The idea with the virtual seating coach was to use the advances in technology but first onboard computing, later with smartphone technology, to provide that coaching in real time, contextually aware, all the time available to the user, and provide that data to the cloud, one, so those algorithms could be improved based on what was learned, as well as share that data with clinicians in order to improve their clinical practice and eventually improve clinical practice guidelines. And ultimately, the goal is that we use the technology interacting with the user to help the user and get the maximum benefit from the technology they're using.
So we're also now trying to apply this concept to manual wheelchair users so we can help reduce their risk of pressure ulcers or pressure injuries. So we're doing that by actually putting sensors underneath the seat of the wheelchair, connecting those to amplifiers and then to their telephone, to their phone, and then they give them guidance on how to perform pressure relief activities and track their progress. And this is just a graph of our machine learning algorithms looking at a left shift pressure relief, right shift of standard sitting in place, and then a rearward lean and a forward lean. And you can see that based on K-cluster analysis, we can discern those different types of pressure injuries, pressure relief maneuvers. And then we can use that to look at a person's compliance. How often do they perform them? One of the challenges is everybody has a different criteria, different needs. So we need them and their clinicians to be able to work together to perform the program. Some people just are not going to move to pressure reliefs. Either they're incapable of it, or they just don't follow directions. And so they wind up with chronic pressure injuries, and they might not use power seat functions. And so we've been working with the University of Texas Applied Research Institute on an active cushion that does smart redistribution of pressure. So this is actually a test rig that we created. It's a simulated buttocks, sits on the cushion, and it measures forces and shears applied through the buttocks to the cushion. This is the cushion here that we've made with Utari. It's now loaded in place. You can see this is a standard pressure mapping map. This is the pressure mapping we get from the internal pressure sensors of the cushion. This is basically, you look, if it's inflated, we have a person sit on it, and then we offload, which means we offload the ischial tuberosities in the trochanters, or we use an algorithm that minimizes the pressure over the entire surface. You can see we actually get better data than the standard offloading procedure you would see with passive cushions or even some of the active cushions.
Joshua Zhong. I am a researcher at the Human Engineering Research Labs. My research project is focused on the performance evaluation and the user interface of the assistive robotic manipulators. So the assistive robotic arms is that a robotic arm can be mounted on the wheelchairs, and that can assist wheelchair users or people with the disability to do some daily tasks using the control interface. So the reason we developed the interface is that we have tested with the current robotic original interfaces, and a lot of users have difficulty learning those either memorize the keys or memorize the command or combination of different keystrokes. So the interface we developed kind of reduce those frustration, so they can quickly learn how to control the robot, and they can do the task just within 10 minutes. There was one veteran looked at our robot, and he was so excited, and he said he just pointed to the robot and saying to the caregiver, "That's what I want." So I think the robot would be really helpful for people sitting in a chair and still want to achieve something for their lives.
I just want to show some of the other slides we've offered. We have added machine vision as well, both thermal camera sensing as well as regular camera sensing, and binocular camera sensing to get distance. And that way we can help develop the trajectory planning for the user and make things simpler. We also had to develop tools for the robots, which which is very common. Very interesting about that, though, is the tools that robots could commonly use with their dexterity work actually pretty well for people with disabilities themselves. And so this is a real strength of 3D printing. We've been also working on trying to make pancakes with the robot. It's possible. It's not easy. There's over 100 steps to make pancakes, even with the pre-mixed batter. But so far, nobody's really liked the pancakes made by the robot. We use additive manufacturing. We have 3 commercial quality machines, selective laser sintering. We have fusion deposition and polymer resins. We don't currently have metal fusion or metal sintering, although we have access to it. Some of the things that we have done very well, this is Alec. That's Rosie in the background again. Alec has severe AH20 cerebral palsy, and he would really like to gain more independence by using a robotic arm with his wheelchair. And so what we did is we actually mounted his phone. The other problem is Alec had a challenge using his phone. So we mounted his phone screen into a 3D printed case with the buttons and the mode switches and a small thumb switch. Here's a version of it. And allowed Alec actually to use his phone and the robot more independently.
Hey, good evening, DAV. Dan Clare. I'm here at the National Disabled Veterans Winter Sports Clinic, a great event that we do with the Department of Veterans Affairs. And I'm here in a room where very important things happen at this event every year. Human Engineering Research Laboratories, in partnership with the VA and the University of Pittsburgh, they do this great research every year that changes the lives of veterans way beyond the event. They're testing wheelchairs, they're testing transfers, things like that. They're doing research that changes veterans' lives every day. And one of the great things we have here is past AV National Commander Dave Riley and DAV's event ambassador, and Dr. Rory Cooper, a great friend of DAV with Human Engineering Research Laboratories. Dr. Cooper, thank you so much. Dave Riley, as you can see, is a quadruple amputee. So Dave doesn't have hands, and that makes it a little bit difficult, especially for someone with a computer science background, to operate a mouse. So last year, Dave talked to Dr. Cooper. They got together and they came up with this device. Tell us about it, Dr. Cooper.
Yeah, it's basically an adapted computer mouse that we designed and actually patented to be compatible with a prosthetic hook. So it's got like Dave's using right now, it's got kind of a dead zone, neutral zone, and then it's got the left button, right button for left click, right click. It allows you to also drag and click, but also for maneuvering, left click. So that you can use a mouse just like anybody else,
Dave, how's it different for you to try and use something?
Oh, it's much better than, I used to use the eyeglasses with, tracks your pupils, and then you use voice assistant, but this is just like using a mouse again almost. I mean, it's...
Another challenge we worked on is the individuals that had multi-limb amputations or severe burns couldn't use a patient-controlled anesthesia where you had to use a little thumb button. And so our Food and Drug Administration said, well, you have to get approval if you modify the button, but but they gave us permission to build a shell around the button. And so therefore, we made that button much larger by putting a shell around it, as you can see here. And then that allowed individuals to activate the anesthesia with an elbow or a forearm or a hip or a knee and control their pain. Ergonomic hand cycles, so people could participate in sports and recreation activities, combination of machining and 3D printing.
Even in the kitchen, where something as simple as preparing meals can be a real challenge.
This kitchen is designed for people with Alzheimer's and brain injury.
This is the queuing kitchen, where specially designed computer programs provide cues or step-by-step instructions for cooking things like pasta.
When I click next, the program will give me my first instruction on how do I get started with making pasta.
Take out cooking pot from the lighted cabinet. Take out pasta from the transparent cabinet. With water from the water faucet. Place pot on the stove.
This program is ideal for someone with cognitive or
So another challenge we ran into is transfers. So you want to, there's a lot of strain on caregivers and individuals with disabilities if they have to be lifted or even using mechanical lifts. So this is a wheelchair-mounted robotic arm that mounts to the power wheelchair, can be on the left or the right side, can store in the back in order to not increase the footprint. It could also be removed and put in a suitcase. And it can be operated with a simple little handheld joystick. So it's been shown to reduce the NASA TLX scores, that's the Tesla index scores, and the USAT, that's the users of assistive technology, were improved. Somebody needs to mute their microphone.
Please mute your microphone.
There we go. And also there was reduced EMG in the lumbar region for the caregivers. But there's some people that they prefer to transfer. We've been working on no lift transfers. So this is a robotic wheelchair with a robotic bed that works together. So you can see the back comes up to the mat, the bed comes up, the back of the mattress becomes the backrest. The person then, it's a little bit out of sync right now, but the chair starts to tilt back with the bed. So I'll operate with a phone or a tablet. Jessica, who's being transferred, she has cerebral palsy. I think we're also working, can people transfer themselves. This was we took this device actually to our local long-term care facility. And we had a woman, Carol, came and spent time with us. And she got transferred and used the device. And then she came back about an hour later with her physician, with her husband's physician, and said that she'd like to get one of these devices so she could take her husband home. And actually, we built a prototype, and she was able to take her husband home after being in the nursing home for over 2 years. And then you can reverse the process in order to get the person out of bed. We've also worked on things as power joysticks with different compensation algorithms. So variable compliance joystick, and the mini joysticks are the force joysticks that you see commonly on some laptops and other devices. We did early work on those. The compensation algorithms have been used pretty much in every power wheelchair in the world, and they allow many more people to drive. Actually, in the United States, we had the problem that it increased demand on our health system by about 4-fold. We also worked on, so here you can see the idea of a template, and that's using super quadratics. And then we also used a head array to looking at if people would actually, to ensure people with traumatic brain injuries or stroke, that they would not, they would look where they were going. And so we put a little magnet on the back of their head and tracked it with these Hall effect sensors. And then we could see where they were going. And if they weren't looking where they were going, we could slow down the wheelchair or stop. It turned out that that was more of an interesting clinical tool because people would learn, and you could actually turn the device off and they would remember that. This is our personal mobility manipulation appliance, or PERMA. It's a robotic wheelchair with bimanual robotic arms. This was an interesting experiment. We took people into regular shopping areas, gave them some money, asked them to buy various items of their choosing. We used social scientists working with us to see how the people in the store would react, the other shoppers as well as the people working in the store, to having a person use a robotic system in their store. And then we were testing the use of the robot in order to perform real world functional tasks. What was interesting was that people actually accepted the robot pretty readily, and also that the robot worked fairly well. And this you can see is an older, simpler robot than we have now, with the JACO that we're working with out of Montreal. We did learn from a social engineering perspective something very interesting, that if you're paying close attention, you may have noticed that Elaine gave him, the store clerk, her wallet first and then the items. And normally you would give the items, have them ring up, and then you would pay for them. But people were so shocked, they would let the participants get free items. This is our mobility and manipulation robot, MeBot. This is Dr. Kim. You saw him earlier in the video with my wife, Rosemary. This is an 8-inch curb, which would be 20 centimeters high, which is impossible for other wheelchairs to climb over, except for those that have tracks that are not really designed for indoor and outdoor use. It has the same footprint as a standard powered wheelchair. Dr. Kim, as you can see, is basically controlling it with a single switch device. And he is able to stay stable through the entire time. And this was only with a few minutes of training. And this is the same thing. Now he's climbing down a curb. One of the other advantages is this system allows it to have an eye-level conversation. You can see he's at the same height as Dr. Candiati there in the video. And also he remains in a stable position the entire time. The nice thing is if he can reverse the switch and reverse it, he can stop at any time. He stays statically stable the entire time. But we're continuing to work on making it faster and more intuitive. This is one of my favorite pictures, by the way. These are Zenon and Siva, two of my graduate students, and Dr. Kim, who was one of my graduate students in the past, all of us with spinal injuries. So we're now working on, rather than pneumatically operated, electrohydraulically operated, so that we can have a wider range of activities and go and be faster and be more commercially viable.
It's a common summer scene. Children playing in the water, splashing each other, or going down a water slide. But for some kids, like Sam, water is an obstacle.
We typically avoid water parks because we know there's the ladder scaffold involved. You have to get up to the slide. And also the rides in the water parks typically just aren't good for someone without balance. So that's just in general, water parks a challenge.
And being in a power wheelchair makes it even more difficult. These wheelchairs run on electricity, and when water comes in contact with them, the results can be shocking. So how do you build a water park that all kids can enjoy? That's the question Gordon Hartman had. He runs the world's first accessible theme park, Morgan's Wonderland in San Antonio.
We had to come up with a wheelchair that would allow for it to get wet and still be able to move about through the use of someone's ability to use a joystick.
That's when he discovered the work of Dr. Rory Cooper at the University of Pittsburgh School of Health and Rehabilitation Sciences. Dr. Cooper is world-renowned for numerous patents and inventions when it comes to wheelchair technology. He's dedicated his life to improving assistive devices for people with disabilities.
I found Dr. Cooper from the first conversation we had on the phone as a person who really wanted to work hard at ensuring that this idea that we had of developing this chair, which would truly be revolutionary.
Gordon and I have the same vision. That's a world where everybody can participate together, so that people with and without disabilities are on the same playing field. The idea is that, hey, an air motor with air tanks, if it's feasible, may provide with a much lighter power chair, much more environmentally friendly, that doesn't need to have the batteries replaced.
And from that idea, a new chair, short for pneumatic chair, was born.
The new chair is powered strictly by compressed air. There's no batteries, so that makes it waterproof. We can recharge it in as little as 10 minutes. Unlike current battery wheelchairs that could take up to 8 hours. It could revolutionize the wheelchair industry.
Brandon Davler, a current graduate student at Pitt School of Health and Rehabilitation Sciences, is a researcher studying under Rory Cooper. Their team works out of the Human Engineering Research Laboratories, where they modeled and built the new chair. The chair that makes a challenging trip to the water park, well, fun.
I like to have the freedom to run around.
It was rewarding to see just how he lit up and the enjoyment that he got out of going through the sprinklers and the water.
He wants to be independent. Quite frankly, we let him go for 30 minutes by himself, and that's what he wants.
And Rory thinks children without disabilities who witness this independence will be influenced too.
That's the kind of experiences we want kids to have, so that when they grow up, they don't have those biases, and they can say, "Hey, I've seen people with disabilities do it just like I have."
The positive influence of the new chair doesn't stop there.
The granting.
So one of the fun things is now that the Giant Eagle is a grocery store chain here in Pennsylvania, and we did some experiments recently, just published those results as well, and they're going to be introducing the new scooter, pneumatically powered scooter, in their grocery stores, to become a greener facility, right? So you don't have to have batteries and replacement. And also lighter weight and hopefully a little bit, cooler looking. So we did a small production run for that study, and it was pretty cool to have hundreds of people use it in the store to go shopping and provide us feedback. I'm gonna go back. So now I'm going to show you a video from the Paralympics that hopefully will show you the power of augmented human technology.
Yes, I can, suddenly, yes, I can. Gee, I'm afraid to go on, it's turned into, yes, I can. Take a look, what do you see? 133 pounds of confidence in me. Got the feeling I can do anything, yes, I can. Something that sings in my blood is telling me, yes, I can. I was just born today, I can go all the way, yes, I can. 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 Hey, yes, I can.
No, you can't.
Yes, I can! Are you ready? I can climb Everest. Yes, I can. I can fight here all night and never rest. Yes, I can. I was just born today. I can go all the way. Yes!
So by the way, if you got to watch if you thought the Olympics were cool, that's how we started the Paralympics in 2016. So with that, and literally jumping through the Olympic rings. Also, if this is fun, in the United States, we have honored inventors throughout history with portraits in the patent office, and our patent office has a display. In 2012, they chose, in order to circulate that a little more widely, to create trading cards like baseball cards in the United States. And so I was honored with one last year with my portrait and trading card. To give you could see among there people, Thomas Edison, Nicholas Tesla, Abraham Lincoln are people that have been honored in the past. There you go. There's my card. And my portrait's in the patent office. So it's pretty cool. It's a way to get kids excited about it. Only 28 people in the history of the United States have thus far been honored. So go to this website. You can see all of the people and the descriptions of what they've accomplished or contributed to the world. I like to, because we are during the COVID-19 and a lot of us can't travel or get out, our labs have actually responded as well and have transitioned from making technologies for people with disabilities to help with the pandemic. So we're making face shields and providing groceries and cleaning supplies, also face masks, and now testing swabs. So I've even got a testing swab with me, although I won't demonstrate it. And had to learn things like sterilization procedures and all of that. But it's, you know, I think that's part of the, if you have those skills as scientists and engineers, hopefully we can bring them to bear working together. So I'd like to thank you for the opportunity to speak with you today, and look forward to meeting many of you in person at some time in the future when we're able to get together.
Yeah, thank you so much, Professor Cooper. We really appreciate that. I think that after this presentation, no one can say, I cannot do something after that. So we learned a lot of that. I don't know if there is some questions in the audience. I have so many, but I will leave. I will give opportunity for others to ask questions. If you have a question, we still have a few minutes. Maybe please unmute your computer and ask your question directly to Dr. Cooper. Please don't be shy, just ask your question.
I really am not nicer than I look.
No, you look great, you look great. While we are waiting probably for some questions after this nice presentations, maybe we have a broad and a diverse community here from different backgrounds. Can you teach us some about the future of all what we are doing from many engineering backgrounds and rehabilitation backgrounds? What's the future for us? What you learned throughout these years, and how we move forward? The second part of my question would be for the corporations that are here present today and the associations. What's your recommendations to get more useful technology, get straight to the point, implement them, commercialize them, and those aspects? I think you are really successful in getting technology from university and labs straight to the clients. So maybe we have a lot to learn from that.
Well, I think the future is going to largely be based on robotics, automation and machine learning in many ways. To give you a sneak preview, we're exploring origami engineering. We're looking at more machine learning and artificial intelligence, from market segmentation to virtual coaching to image interpretation. So I think that's going to have a large impact on the future, as well as continued in flexible manufacturing as well, which will allow us to do a lot more personalization. So we can literally, you can see with the face shields and the swabs, right? We made from making robots and wheelchairs and other assistive devices to making personal protective equipment in a few weeks' time. And that has to do with having not only smart scientists and engineers, but also having the equipment that is flexible enough to transition from one area to another fairly rapid. The other thing that I think is the future is what we're doing now, is global collaboration, so that we have people with different experiences, different perspectives, working together to solve a common problem. I think the problems that we have now and the problems that we're going to have in the future are very difficult for a single individual to solve or small groups, and need to be done in more team science and team engineering. And then lastly, I think if I had to glimpse into the future, is the whole idea of participatory design, action, engineering, and research, where we have clinicians, end users, and industry, academia, scientists, and engineers all working together. One of the reasons I think that we're successful in bringing things to market is we are very well connected to both the clinical and the research of the clinical and the user community. And we develop technologies that not only advanced and solve real needs, but that are also something that can be fabricated. If you had the chance to visit us, what things you could see, hopefully you saw that from the slides and the videos, that we can do really a commercial quality product in our laboratory, which has a big influence on the outcomes of the research, and also lessens the gap required to cross in order for technology transfer to be successful. So that's my crystal ball.
Yeah, thanks so much. I have a specific question for you from the audience. Question is, how long does the PNO chair last before needing to be recharged?
That's a great question. It can go about 3 miles before it needs to be recharged. Normal power chairs can go anywhere from about 3 to 9 miles before needing to be recharged. But the advantage is that the new chair can be recharged in anywhere from 5 to 10 minutes, where electric powered wheelchairs require anywhere from 4 to 8 hours. And so the concept would be that so something like in the Giant Eagle store, it turns out that our new chairs were actually more available to their shoppers than the electric powered wheelchairs. One, they had fewer failures. We had none. There were several. And then secondly, air powered because the air pressure is a very accurate measurement of how much range you have left, whereas voltage on a battery is not a very accurate measurement of how much range you have left. So we didn't strand anybody. And then we could charge rapidly. And pneumatics are very reliable technology.
Great, thank you. Maybe to wrap up, I would have last questions. What's your advice for maybe new faculties, young researchers, students who want to get started in their careers? What's the secret of a successful program and career?
Well, first, come and work with us. We'd love to have you in Pittsburgh or work with you remotely. We're always happy to work with bright scientists, engineers, clinicians, and consumers of all ages. The other advice I would give is find good people to work with and work with them in a team. It's always important to, I think the secret to success is have end users, clinicians, scientists, and engineers working together. Find people, and then you have to be tenacious. Even as successful as I am and our group has been, if you can get 50% of your grants funded, you're doing really well. And so you just, it's like baseball. If you're batting 300, you're a superstar. So don't be discouraged.
Great, that's a great way to close this keynote speech. Thanks so much again, Professor Cooper. I think many of the people here enjoyed this this talk. Thanks again. We hope to see you here in Winnipeg in a few months or years, and you are almost welcome to visit us and the College of Rehabilitation Sciences in Manitoba.
Thank you. Thank you for the opportunity.
Thank you. Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.